Just checking, making sure you're awake. This annoying slide, right? I mean, it's the gift that keeps on giving. This past 3 weeks, it's been incredibly challenging, emotionally tough, so much loss just within this small congregation. So many people struggling. And I know this is not a Debbie Downer sermon, but I know a lot of people are struggling. A lot of us can feel so much weight from life. Life has a way of knocking us down. Life has a way of sometimes being cruel. There are a lot of ironies in life. Things that just provide twists and turns that surprise us. And that's life. In the adult class, we were talking about how Jesus said over and over, "You will suffer for my name. You will experience persecution because of my name. People will hate you because of me." And Jesus' answer to them was not, "But I'm going to protect you and guard your heart so that you're going to be riding on a puffy cloud for the rest of your life." Jesus' answer to them was, "So, this will happen. If you're going to follow me, you must deny yourself, take up your cross, and follow me." It's a serious call for Christians. Jesus took following him very seriously. People had to risk everything to follow him. They had to risk persecution. They had to risk starvation. They had to risk poverty. They had to risk losing their lives. They had to risk it all to follow Jesus because the reward is so great. And a lot of us know about rewards because we've struggled, we've suffered, we've had challenges in life, and then we've been rescued. And I don't know about some of you guys or all of you guys, but I know when I've been desperate, to be rescued, when I've been desperate and I've been down and I've been depressed and I've been lonely and I've been sad or whatever, it never helped to feel the absence of people who should have been there. What helped was those surprise visitors who showed up and they were just present. They were just there. And there's always been somebody who's been there. So, this isn't a sad, sappy, I've been in desperate times and nobody was there. Somebody's always been there. But I think all of us can relate to that when we're struggling to come back up for air, when life has been pushing us down and we've been struggling, there's this alienation factor that gets compounded. We become more lonely, more sad, more depressed. We feel more worthless. We feel far lonelier when we're struggling. And those are the times when we need more people. And ironically, those are the times when friends tend to stray away from us because they want us to get happy and get better. So we know what it's like to cry out for help. We know what it's like to not receive help, and we know what it's like to receive help. We know both sides of that coin. Most of us who are living and breathing, we know both sides of that coin. And I think about times when I've messed up as a kid. I grew up in a home with 10 brothers and sisters. We weren't always perfect, if you can believe that. And there were some times that we did some things that were pretty stupid, right? And we were in need of rescuing. We were in need of mercy. And sometimes it's both hard to ask for mercy and it's hard to receive mercy when you don't feel good about yourself for doing something that's awful. And I remember times when we got in trouble, which may or may not have been pretty often. And I remember having talks, and Mom would talk to us most often, and she would say, what you did was really stupid, except she would be yelling. And we already knew that what we did was really dumb and what we did had consequences, but she would point them out. She was really gifted at coming up with this checklist of people and all the ripple effects of the people who we harmed in the process of making really stupid decisions. And she would point that out, and you would start to feel more worthless, and you would feel worse about what you did, and your shame would increase. And then she would follow that up with, what are you going to do to make it right? Charles and I talked after class today. We were talking about forgiveness and this notion of, why we've gotten to a place where our view of forgiveness culturally is that the burden to forgive is on the shoulders of the person who was wronged, while there's no burden on the shoulders of the person who did the wrong to make any changes. And how that's contrary to what God teaches. God requires us, when we're crying out for mercy, to change our hearts, to change our lives, to change for the better, to treat people with respect and with dignity and with honor. God requires that of us, especially if we're branded with His Holy Spirit. God requires us to do right by people. And so in those moments, when I was desperate for mercy, when I was desperate for love, when I was desperate for forgiveness, my mom didn't offer it unconditionally. She made me walk down. I will never forget how humiliated I was when she made me walk down to a neighbor's who I had borrowed some things from with no intention to return them. And my mom found out. Somehow they always find out. And she made me walk down to that house by myself, knock on the door, tell the person that I stole from them, and return the goods and make a promise to them that I would never do it again. I was so humiliated. And that was the right thing to do. And mercy took on new meaning for me that day. It wasn't this, well, I know you did these bad things, but I love you anyway, and I forgive you. And, the neighbor will never know that you took them. There was none of that in my life. And so mercy became really precious. And receiving mercy was a gift. And so in our moments of desperation, I think all of us can relate to that we need somebody to pour mercy on top of us. But it should never be expected. It should never be taken for granted. It should require this change of heart on our behalf. And when we're broken and when we're lonely and when we're sad, oftentimes that's where God does the most work in us. And if you think about that, there's a guy that, his name is Richard Bandler, and I really like this guy, and he's just so quirky and weird, and he was one of the co-creators of NLP, neuro-linguistic programming, and he's this quirky, weird guy. And I like him because he says, the people who change the quickest are the people who get fed up with themselves the quickest. They get fed up with their bad behaviors. They get fed up with the idea that they're chronic smokers, that they're chronic drinkers, that they have these habits that they keep telling themselves that they can't break. And finally one day they just build up and they get fed up with themselves and they just quit. He's like, there's no weaning off. They just quit. Those are the biggest success stories. And he said, I find it in my clients and my patients that the quickest turnaround is from people who get fed up with themselves really quickly. And they just finally give up the bad habits and they change. There's this change of heart. And I think about that in relation to Psalm 86. And I'm preaching on Psalm 86 because this psalm is especially close to my heart. Marianne had asked me to read this at Bill's graveside. Psalm 86 is special to Marianne because Bill, he loved music, and he loved the Psalms, and he loved reading his Bible. And Marianne told me that her favorite thing to do was to wake up in the morning, and she would sit and watch Bill as he was looking out the window and he would read his Bible. And I just pictured this cool moment where Bill didn't even know that she was watching him, and she would just watch him sit and read his Bible while she was doing her Bible devotion. And so Bill, Tex, you said it too. Every time he would preach or do the Lord's table, he would preach from the Psalms. He loved the Psalms. That was his favorite book in all the Bible. And so with his love of the Psalms and his love of music, Bill had hired a composer up in Johnstown for the Johnstown Symphony to compose 4-part a cappella music to sing Psalm 86. And Bill had told me about this. He may have told some of you about this, but about 3 or 4 weeks ago, Bill told me that he had hired this composer, and he was just grinning from ear to ear, and he's like, I can't wait until Psalm 86 comes back from the composer and we can sing that as a congregation. Obviously, that moment won't come for Bill, but I told Mary Ann when the sheet music comes out, I want a copy of that sheet music, and I want us to learn that song and to sing it. But Psalm 86 obviously had deep meaning for Bill. And if you knew Bill, you knew that he was humble, and Bill didn't, he never wanted people to know when he was giving, and he just quietly did it. And he helped thousands of people that way. And I read this psalm, and this psalm is a prayer of David, and David is in a time of desperation, and David's crying out to God, and David's desperate for mercy. So I want to read, I'm going to read what Brent read this morning, but I'm going to keep going past verse 6. This is David's prayer to God. Incline your ear, O Lord, and answer me, for I am poor and needy. Preserve my life, for I am godly. Save your servant who trusts in you. You are my God. Be gracious to me, O Lord. For to you do I cry all the day. Gladden the soul of your servant, for to you, O Lord, do I lift up my soul. For you, O Lord, are good and forgiving, abounding in steadfast love to all who call upon you. Give ear, O Lord, to my prayer. Listen to my plea for grace. Do you hear his message? Do you hear his heart? Do you hear what he's saying to God? He's crying out. He's pleading for mercy. He's saying, pour this mercy on me because I've messed up. And God, I've changed my heart and I've turned it back to you. Now I want you to picture for a moment the human side of this. When kids cry out to their parents for mercy and they receive none. When kids change their heart and they change what they're doing and they get abuse in return. And that is polar opposite of who God is. When people cry out to God for mercy, when people change their hearts, when people humble themselves before God, God reaches down and he picks them up and he holds them close to his heart. David continues his prayer in verse 7. In the day of my trouble I call upon you, for you answer me. There is none like you among the gods, O Lord, nor are there any works like yours. All the nations you made shall come and worship before you, O Lord, and shall glorify your name. For you are great and do wondrous things. You alone are God. Teach me your way, O Lord, that I may walk in your truth. Unite my heart to fear your name. I give thanks to you, O my Lord God, with my whole heart, and I will glorify your name forever. For great is your steadfast love toward me. You have delivered my soul from the depths of Sheol. O God, insolent men have risen up against me. A band of ruthless men seeks my life, and they do not set you before them. But you, O God, are a merciful and gracious. You, O Lord, are a God merciful and gracious, slow to anger, and abounding in steadfast love and faithfulness. Turn to me and be gracious to me. Give your strength to your servant and save the son of your maidservant. Show me a sign of your favor that those who hate me may see and be put to shame. Because you, Lord, have helped me and comforted me. I love that psalm, and that psalm has a whole lot of new meaning to me. And I thought, this, likely was a favorite psalm of Bill's, and Bill tried his hardest to live his life for God. I would say he did a good job. But I think it's so incredible to peer into David's heart. And in peering into David's heart, we peer into God's heart, and we see that God reaches down, and God does give mercy to us, that God does extend mercy. He rescues us when we're in our deepest time of need. That's good news. That's the news that we need to be telling people. And I see a lot of Christians who walk around and behave as if they have no hope. They behave as if they've not received any mercy. They've behaved as if they've done all this wrong and they'll never be forgiven. I see Christians walk around and behave in ways that are just contrary to who God is. And if we look at this psalm, we know that God's heart is incredible, that God has a huge heart, that God loves each and every one of us, and we were fearfully and wonderfully made, that God knew us before we were born, that God counted the hairs on our head. We serve an incredible God. And I know a lot of people are really struggling this year in so many different ways. I know that we've experienced 4 deaths back to back. I just went to Kristen Lowry's dad's viewing yesterday. They're struggling. They're grieving. There's been a lot of loss. But don't forget in the midst of loss that there's a lot of compassion. There's a lot of mercy. There's a lot of comfort. There's a lot of hope. God is an incredible God. We serve an amazing God. If you ask me, I know some people are really worried about what's going to happen. We just had a really bizarre and a continuing bizarre political season. COVID has been weird, to say the least. There are a lot of unknowns. A lot of people are fearful. But if you ask me if I'm fearful, am I fearful for the church? Am I fearful for what's going to happen in 2021? Am I fearful for the country? I'm not. Because I know who we serve. And there's hope. There's incredible hope. And there's joy. And there's compassion. And there's mercy. And in times of desperation, God reaches down and He picks us up. And He holds us close to His heart. I hope today that you're encouraged by this psalm. I'll let you know when the sheet music comes in so that we can start practicing. Jared and Eric and DP had to go to work. You guys are going to be busy. But I'm excited for that. I think that's cool, and I think that's going to be a really neat thing whenever we get that song back. If you know of people who are struggling, if you know of people who are lonely, if you know of people who are sad, reach out to them. Don't wait till tomorrow. Reach out to them today. Pick up the phone, call them, text them, drop a card in the mail. Find a way to bless people, to extend mercy to them in their time of desperation. Be the hands and the feet of Jesus and show people the heart of God. It's an amazing heart. If there's anybody this morning who has any prayer needs or anybody who's not yet taken that step to put Christ on in baptism, I would invite you to come up, where shepherds will be in the back as we all stand and sing this song together.